All right, welcome to Democracy in the Constitution. This is number 10, presentation number 10 in the Constitution seminar series. And the first thing to be noted about this presentation is democracy in the Constitution is a bad name. Why? Because democracy doesn't show up. The word democracy doesn't show up anywhere in our federal Constitution, nor in any of the 50 state constitutions. There simply isn't democracy in the Constitution. So it's kind of a funny way to start it by saying it's a bad name. But that's something to know about this presentation. We're going to get into this, but what I do when I do these presentations, I go through and I gather all the quotes I can possibly find, and I put them together, and I grab all the constitutional references and pull those all together and come up with all these ideas that I think are helpful and beneficial. At the end of this presentation, I had 5 or 6 quotes left over. I didn't know where to fit them in, so I thought, well, I'll just put them at the beginning. And it turns out that they're kind of interesting to look at, and they apply very much to this whole concept. So we're going to go through some slides and some quotes from the founders and kind of contrast those with the liberals and progressives, okay? First one here is by George Washington. He says, "We must take human nature as we find it. Perfection falls not to the share of mortals." That's an interesting thing to say, isn't it? That we as human beings aren't perfect. We have to take that. We have to accept that and understand that that's just how it is. There's a man named Herbert Croly, a leader in the progressive movement. He said this: "Human nature can be raised to a higher level by an improvement in institutions and laws." In other words, the way to change human nature is just to give the government more power. If we just had an agency for that, or a bureaucrat to fix that, we could fix that. We can change human nature. George Washington says, no, we can't. We have to accept it how it is. Okay? Along the same lines here, Thomas Jefferson says, "Human nature is the same on every side of the Atlantic, and will be alike influenced by the same causes. The time to guard against corruption and tyranny is before they shall have gotten a hold on us." Okay? That's the founder's view. Progressives say something along the lines of some humans are more equal than others, right? That's communism. Some are more equal than others. And they should govern those who aren't as enlightened. They attempt to set themselves up as gods on earth and to ruthlessly force their views on all others with the abiding assurance that the end justifies the means. Okay? So typically what we could say is, well, yeah, we know that there's corruption in the EU. We know that communist China and socialist Germany have corrupt leaders, but that doesn't happen here in the United States. Jefferson says, no, human nature is the same on both sides of the Atlantic, and we need to guard against that. Okay? Here's a pretty famous quote by James Madison. "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls in government would be necessary." So in government, by necessity, men are trusted with power and force, right? The force of government. The progressives say we can trust men in positions of power who are guided by altruistic goals and who have put off their self-interest and only seek the public good. Whereas Madison says, look, men aren't angels. And just because someone's in government doesn't make them an angel. If men were angels, they'd need no government, but men aren't angels, okay? And so we understand the opposite side there again. John Adams says, "It's weakness rather than wickedness which renders men unfit to be trusted with unlimited power." And according to Adams, who has that weakness? All men, all mankind, right? Just like Lord Acton said that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay? Nobody is immune. All mankind's immune, both those in the public and those in the public service. And so we shouldn't trust any of them with absolute power. The progressives, on the other hand, say, no, we can, because they understand these things. They know how to govern. They're elite. They're progressed, right, in how they think and how they understand things. Madison says, "As there is a degree of depravity in mankind which requires a certain degree of circumspection and distrust, so there are other qualities in human nature which justify a certain portion of esteem and confidence." So we're kind of dual beings, right? There's things about us that we can't trust, but there's also things about us that we need to unleash and say, yeah, go for it. That's a great, good, righteous, godly desire, right? We need to get out of the way. He says, "Republican government presupposes the existence of these qualities in a higher degree than any other form." This idea of a republic, right? We're a republic. We talked about this before. We're not a democracy, we're a republic, a rule of law. A republic presupposes the idea that we have things we need to restrain and have government use their force to restrain us on. We also have things that government needs to get out of the way and let the people in their own endeavors become the great people they can be. Lastly, Madison says, "Were the pictures which have been drawn by the political jealousy of some among us faithful likenesses of the human character, the inference would be that there is not sufficient virtue among men for self-government, and that nothing less than the chains of despotism can restrain them from destroying and devouring one another." You can't possibly, people are saying, and Madison's saying it's not true, you can't possibly trust people to govern themselves. They don't have enough virtue. They would destroy themselves. And the progressives said, look, people need to be told what to do. They don't know how to handle freedom because they're incapable of ever doing good. The progressives say, we're here to save the day because you guys who don't know how, even though you may not like our control and our bureaucracy, etc., we're here because we're here to do good for you. We're here to control you because you can't control yourself. Okay, so what I did is I put together a little chart that I think is interesting. I compared the founders and the progressives. The founders, according to them, man's nature is fallen but has a high potential. Okay, that duality of our human nature. According to the progressives, man's nature, they don't have any virtue. They are selfish. According to the founders, we are dependent upon God and morality to fix that fallen portion of our nature. Progressives say we're dependent upon the government. Founders say man's self-interest is a positive force if not used to infringe on others' rights. It's a good thing to have people have self-interest. That profit motive impels action, right? Okay? The progressives say that man's self-interest must be eliminated and replaced with the public interest, the collective good. Okay? Founders say that rights are based individually. The progressives say that rights are based collectively. The rule of law under the founders' model and the progressives' model is the rule of the elite, because after all, they know better. Okay? The proper role of government, according to the founders, is to protect individual rights. It's a negative force. Okay? It acts on those who infringe on other people's rights. It's negative. Okay? It's to protective. Whereas the proper role of government in progressives is a providential. It provides needs and wants. It's a positive force. We're going to help you. We're going to give you. We're going to change you. That's how the progressives see it. Legitimate laws in the founders' model uphold natural law. They coincide with natural law. Whereas in the progressive model, the legitimate laws are there to change man's nature. Okay? Now, the ultimate goal in the founders is freedom and prosperity, and the ultimate goal under the progressives is utopia, where there's no self-interest. Okay? I don't know. To me, that's an interesting little set of quotes and a comparison, a chart there to give us an idea and really get us, I think, on the right foundation to understand, okay, here's why there are different thoughts about how human nature is and how government should interact with human nature. And it's maybe a good foundation for starting our presentation. So